All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to talk about Errol Spence Jr. and a comment that was made about him by Raul Marquez, talking about the potential Errol Spence Jr. Terence Crawford fight and how it would turn out if it took place. A extremely good observation. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to be in the 147-pound division in the fight prediction type of conversation. But this one in particular, I think, is very interesting because in it, Errol Spence Jr. was referred to pretty much as a black Mexican fighter. And for that reason, a very well-known fighter commentator, Raul Marquez, predicts that he will break down and stop Terence Bud Crawford if they fight. Now, before I get into that, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are a longtime subscriber and supporter of the channel, thank you so much for your continued support. If you are new to the channel, welcome to the channel. Please accept my invitation to hit that subscribe button, hit that bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos, which we do pretty much on a daily basis in the live stream format and in the video format. All right, so hopefully we got a fight coming up. Do not know if it's fight's going to take place or not. So in the comment section, consider this dang near a fantasy fight type of conversation until it's actually announced. But still, this is what boxing is. It's still very, very fun to talk about. And people are still being asked a lot about the fight. And when they're being asked about the fight, in my opinion, it really does show you can actually learn a lot about the sport just listening to why some of these people predict one fight or the other. And in this case, with Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, pretty much everybody's being asked about it every interview. So this weekend, Raul Marquez, who is a former 154-pound and 160-pound fighter primarily in the 90s, early 2000s, was asked about the fight, and he said two things were interesting in it. First, before I tell you what he says, remember that he works for Showtime. Similarly, he covers fights for Showtime in Spanish, does translations, does all of that stuff. So he's been with Showtime for a while. So similarly, Roy Jones Jr. did a prediction with Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford, and he pointed out the same thing with him as Raul Marquez pointed out about himself, which is that in Roy Jones Jr. case, Roy Jones Jr. has seen a lot of Terence Crawford up close and personal because Roy Jones Jr. was covering his fights for when he fought on HBO and has not seen as much of Errol Spence. Same thing for for Raul Marquez. He sees Errol Spence Jr.'s Showtime fights up close, calling the fights, and does not call fights for Terence Crawford. So when the two gave the prediction, I was like, okay, this is pretty interesting. Now, what Raul Marquez says is, look, I think Errol Spence Jr. is going to break down Terence Crawford because he fights like a Mexican. Now, if you look at who people are picking, and when they talk about the Hall of Fame fighters, now, Raul Marquez is not a Hall of Fame fighter. He's not that level of fighter. But I will put this proposition out that there are a lot of guys that are not Hall of Fame fighters. Most boxers are not Hall of Fame fighters. You become a Hall of Fame fighter because of your athletic ability, your skill, your determination, a lot of those things. You do not become a Hall of Fame fighter for being able to predict fights, for being a world-class matchmaker. Now, matchmakers, that's what they do. Those are the guys that are there trying to figure out, on very, very technical, in a very technical manner, what fighter likes what fighter doesn't like, what would be a good matchup for this guy, what would be a good matchup for that guy, right? So both of these guys, in my opinion, are equally able to watch the sport of boxing and be able to predict who they think will win. Now, the comparison to a Mexican for Errol Spence Jr. is an obvious one where his attempt, what he is trying to do is he's trying to force the fight the entire time, or for the majority of the time. He's trying to force the fight. He's trying to work his way inside behind a good jab, get on the inside, and attack the body, wear your body down. Over time, as the fight goes on, you slow down. They start picking up the pace, which really will look like he's picking up the pace, but really you're slowing down. Similar to like if any of you guys run track, you know track and field. If you ever run a 100-meter dash, you'll realize that it's really not. When a guy looks like he is really taking off and separating himself from someone in a race, a lot of times it's really not that the person is speeding up. It's that the person that looks like he's getting passed up is literally slowing down faster than the other guy is slowing down. So if one guy slows down and he's going this way and this guy's slowing down slower, it looks like that. It looks like he's taking off, but it's really this guy is slowing down and this guy's slowing down, but they're slowing down at different paces, which creates that illusion. I think that's also kind of the same thing in boxing, where if you are really everybody's going to get more tired as the fight goes on, because you're really extending yourself the entire time. But when you go to the body, you make somebody's hip sore, arm sore, right? Hit him in the abdomen over time, you probably get a lot of swelling coming on, just makes it more painful, makes you more tired. And that's what Errol Spence Jr. does in that fight. And Raul Marquez is looking at him and appreciates that style, understands how you apply that style, and says, hey, look, man, that stuff is a lot harder to get away with from than some people may think, right? Now, as far as like that style and how that matches up with the more athletic style or what could be considered Black American style, I've always said this, and I maintain that this is true. When you have somebody that is a real A+ level African American fighter that is really hitting and not getting hit, right? They should be able to beat that pressure, that really, strictly pressure fighter. But if you have a guy that is a B level guy that is doing that, and a guy that's pressuring in that style, the guy that's pressuring is going to win that style, because he's going to start catching them. Now, what I think you have here is a case of an A+ level guy that can not only do that style, he can also box. And that's Errol Spence Jr. And I think he's doing that at an A+ level. The question is whether or not Terence Crawford is going to be able to consistently stay away from that and not engage in that over time. Because Errol is somebody that will wear you down, and he is throwing a lot of very thudding shots. They're not slow shots, they're thudding shots, and there are a lot of thudding body shots. That stuff will slow you down over time and may make you susceptible to the stoppage. I disagree with some things I may do a separate video on this that Roy Jones Jr. had said about how Errol starts slow. Nah, dude, Errol starts fast, and he really does take off pretty much from the middle of the first round through the sixth round. There's no point in time where Errol is going about his business in a slow, plodding fashion. But anyway, that's my take on the issue. You let me know what you think, and with that, I'm out. Peace.